just want to go ahead and thank the Periodic Paralysis Association for giving me this opportunity. You guys have been super welcoming and sweet, so I've really appreciated that. And for those of you this is kind of your first medical conference or first PPA conference, I'm so glad you're here. You're definitely in a great spot to really learn a lot of new information and also meet other people that struggle with similar things that you do. I find having community is super, super helpful. All right, so I'm going to start off with a question, so I hope people are ready to talk. What does food mean to you? Something I have to remember to actually eat? Okay. Stability, fuel, I love it. Taste, yes. Delicious. Yeah. What'd you say? Community, yeah, that social aspect for sure. Stop from being hangry. Solves hangriness, absolutely. All right, so it would help if I click the button here. Hold on, everyone. There we go. So here's our little roadmap for today. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself and then dive right into hypo and hyperperiodic paralysis and their nutrition implications, and finish off with Andersen-Tawil syndrome, and then end with some questions. So I wanted to start by telling you a little bit about my personal nutrition philosophy, because many dietitians and even different healthcare professionals think of food very differently, but for me, I think about it as something that really feeds your mind, body, and soul. I find eating as an act of self-care and a way of taking care of yourself. I use a health at every size approach, meaning that I believe everyone, no matter your body size or ability status, is worthy of having adequate access to medical care. I incorporate principles of intuitive eating in my work. I think nutrition's super individualized. And I always encourage people to eat as what feels best for your body, right? And that's gonna look so different from person to person, and not just folks with chronic illnesses, but people in general, right? And I always like to remind people there are no good or bad foods. There's simply just food with different nutritional values, okay? So a little bit about me. I'm Anita. I'm a registered dietitian based out of Boston, Massachusetts. I'm gonna forget this slide thing every time, I swear. There we go. I specialize in the treatment of eating disorders and chronic illness, and I really like to work with adolescents and young adults. I am also a chronic illness fighter, fellow spoonie, whatever word you want to say, which really drives my passion for others and advocating for change. I knew from a young age that I wanted to go into a helping profession. As a kid, I remember lining up my stuffed animals and Barbies and playing doctor with them. During adolescence and into my college years, I easily became the therapist friend. So when I first got sick my senior year of high school, I felt devastated that my symptoms and pain were being questioned by the so-called medical professionals. I was young and sick with no answers. My symptoms and quality of life continued to get worse, and I felt hopeless. However, I'm stubborn and determined, and I was gonna continue to search for adequate care, no matter what distance I traveled or what that looked like. And so after a lot of suffering, I finally got the answers I needed. I realized how important it is to have providers that at the very least will listen to you and validate you. I realized how many people, especially young women, struggle to get adequate care, and something needed to be done, and I just couldn't sit around and not do anything about it. I know we're often gaslit, told it's all in our head, or maybe it's just anxiety. I'm sure many of you have had that experience as well. I've always loved food. I am a foodie. So when I took my first nutrition class and realized the big role food plays in managing different illnesses, I was hooked. I got to work in healthcare and talk about food all day, which leaves me sometimes hungry most of the day. My passion is fueled by my own search for adequate care when it comes to rare chronic illnesses. I hope to make a difference in the lives of my clients and in the field by being a listening ear and often thinking outside of the box. Everyone deserves access to providers that listen and meet them with compassion. So I like to give this little example of a patient that I guess showcases the things that can be done even when you are in that phase of searching for diagnoses, your answer. So when I first got started in private practice, I had this client who came to me with a bunch of GI symptoms, some other medical stuff going on. After doing her intake and meeting her, I realized there was much more going on with her medical picture. I sent her to a few specialists to gather more answers and help her find some relief. And meanwhile, we started looking at the food piece of things. Oftentimes, when people get physical symptoms with eating, they become fearful of that food, which then limits your diet, right? So then maybe you're not getting the right vitamins, minerals, nutrition you need. You're also missing out on those social things like going to restaurants with friends. And so her quality of life was just kind of on the decline. So by working together, doing exposures, and having her keep a detailed food diary, we were able to help her reintroduce foods back into her diet. Having more food choices again helped her to improve her quality of life. She was able to get back to some of those things she enjoyed. And I like to share this because even though I'm not a doctor and I was not the one that diagnosed her, during that process, which I'm sure you all know can be so frustrating and just feel like you can't get any answers, I was able to help her at least gain some control of her life back while she was working through the diagnosis process. All right. So as I'm sure most of you know, diet can be incredibly helpful in controlling periodic paralysis episodes. Knowing what type of periodic paralysis you have is essential to know what foods to be cautious of. I want one big takeaway to be that nutrition doesn't have to be complicated. I want to help you guys simplify it for yourselves. And we will talk a little bit about the role of potassium in the body. But save your detailed questions for Dr. Cannon because he is the expert and will be coming on after me. Okay. Oftentimes, I feel like we don't think of things like diet, stress, sleep, taking care of our mental and physical health to be so important in managing our chronic illnesses. What we eat can be just as important as other forms of treatment like physical therapy, medication. It's all part of this bigger picture. And I can't really think of one disease or disorder that doesn't involve nutrition in some capacity. As I'm sure you all know, it's super important when we're thinking of periodic paralysis. I don't share a diagnosis of periodic paralysis. However, I have several other chronic illnesses, and I use nutrition to manage them. It's such an important piece in me having a better quality of life and being able to do the things I enjoy, such as being with you all today. The tricky but really cool thing about nutrition is that it's not a one-size-fits-all. It is highly individualized, and I really want to emphasize that what works for one person might not work for another person. Personally, it took me a lot of trial and error to find what works for me. I had to try a lot of things, and even to this day, there's some things that I'm still finding out what used to work maybe doesn't work anymore. So it's kind of this ever-changing process. Because it would be too easy if it just stayed the same, right? I struggle with IBS, gastroparesis, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and POTS. So some of these things that I do might be different from what people with periodic paralysis have to do. But overarching, knowing your triggers, being prepared, and paying attention to your nutrition are all common themes. Some things that help me stay on track is eating on a consistent schedule. So my 3 meals, my 2 to 3 snacks, I oftentimes say I eat like a toddler because I am a little bit more of a grazer and I like to eat every few hours because that works for my body. I avoid the foods that cause my symptoms to be worse. I incorporate the foods that make me feel good. I call them my feel-good foods. And for me, increasing salt and fluids helps my conditions. Oh, that was loud, I'm sorry. I always try to plan ahead if I'm not gonna be home, so I always have a snack on me, just in case, I need something because I've been stuck in too many situations where then I get hangry and things aren't going so hot, so always carry a snack. You don't need to overcomplicate nutrition. Unless recommended by your doctor, diets found on the internet or anything that sounds too good to be true probably is. Nutrition really comes down to knowing your triggers and building a balanced plate. Some combination of carbs, protein, fats, and plants is what I say, is just what you need, and of course your dessert sometimes. When making these changes, remember to start small and be consistent. Potassium plays a role in maintaining fluid levels outside of our cells and is important for muscle contraction, among other bodily functions. And I will leave it there for now until Dr. Cannon's speech. All right, so we're going to talk about hypokalemic periodic paralysis. What helps me think of this all through undergrad was hypo is the O, and it's the O in low. So, triggered by episodes of low potassium. Common triggers for symptoms are carbohydrates, and we're going to get into simple and complex. Salt, eating a large meal, strenuous exercise, and temperature extremes. All right, I have another question for you guys, and you can just shout them out. What are examples of carbohydrates? Bread, noodles, sugar, pasta, donuts, fruit, rice. All right, so you guys know this stuff. I don't know why I'm here. All those things, really anything that's made of flour, potatoes, fruit has carbs, so a lot of things, and I can talk more about that later. So why do we need carbs? Carbs are really important. Carbs are broken down into glucose, which is the body and brain's main source of energy. They provide us with fiber to help our digestive system and also help to regulate our blood sugar so we don't experience crashes. Oftentimes when we're hungry, I'm sure you notice that you usually are craving carbs, right? I don't know if there's anyone here that when you're hungry, you're craving a kale salad, because that's on me. Right? We usually want a granola bar, some chocolate, something carby, right? Because our body knows that's going to give us energy. Our body's really smart like that. Some foods that are high in salt. Anyone know? Have some ideas? Potato chips, pickles, olives, cheese. Anything canned. Lunch meat, fast food. Yep. Those are some main ones. Yep, you got it. All right, so similar to potassium, we need salt to help maintain normal fluid levels in the body, and it also plays a role in contracting and relaxing our muscles. When you eat a large meal, if you're someone that has hypokalemic periodic paralysis, you eat a large meal that's high in carbs, it sometimes can trigger people to have episodes. Again, this piece is very individualized on what that looks like. Regarding exercise, when we exercise, we have a drop in our potassium after exercising due to losing potassium in our sweat. So it's super important to have a pre-workout snack and fluids, and the same thing after, just so you're replenishing your body. All right, so managing hypokalemic periodic paralysis with diet. Oftentimes, eating foods high in potassium and low in carbohydrates can help. So we're thinking avocados, bananas, almonds, walnuts, cheese, eggs, peanut butter, tomatoes, spinach. There's a long list. A little on complex carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates are those things that essentially take longer to break down in our body. So those are going to be things like oats, whole grain products, certain fruits and vegetables. So basically those things have fiber, which takes our GI system longer to break down, therefore giving you more of that sustained energy instead of having a simple carb like a piece of chocolate where it's going to cause your blood sugar to spike and then drop quicker. Now they're both okay, it's just important to know kind of how those different foods work in your body. Having a more balanced plate, including more complex carbs, can help, and we will talk about that. Some more examples of the simple carbs. I want you to think of any white bread products, white breads, pastas, white potatoes, any sort of snack food, candies, juice, anything that's going to kind of give you that really quick burst of sugar. And then we talked about complex carbs. And so how do complex carbs help your periodic paralysis. So they are broken down much slower than simple carbs, so potassium levels aren't affected as drastically. So incorporating more of these is going to be good for you and your symptoms. So you're probably thinking, well, what the heck can I eat if I have to watch my white carbs because they're really good, right? So some options that I think can be some good substitutes would be some protein bars. You know, those can make really good on-the-go snacks if you're paying attention to the carb amount on those. Veggies with dip can be good. Getting those crackers that are like made out of nuts, like the nut thins, and having some cheese with those make a good snack. Berries, any sugar-free product. Again, so just kind of figuring out the balance of the different products that's gonna work for you. Okay, here's where I might make you hungry. So here you can see 3 different meal items and how I kind of made them a little more hypokalemic friendly. So in that first picture, you see the bowl of buttered noodles. And so you can still enjoy pasta, just maybe consider using a whole wheat noodle, adding some protein to your plate, and a vegetable. So by building a balanced plate, it's not gonna affect your blood sugar as greatly as if you were just having the pasta. Same thing with the burger, taking that burger and swapping it for a burger on a whole wheat bun with some sweet potato fries. And then with the breakfast, scrambled eggs with white toast, maybe swapping it for some scrambled eggs with some veggies or cheese in it too, and some whole grain bread. All right. Oops. There we go. So I just wrote down some food ideas that if I had a client that was struggling with periodic paralysis, that if we were doing some meal planning, sometimes helpful to just come up with some ideas that can kind of be your go-to things, right? So when you're not in the mood to cook or think, you know, okay, I can have these foods and they're gonna give me the nutrition I need, be tasty and fill me up. So all of these are going to be hypokalemic friendly. And I won't read through the whole thing, but you can take a look, take a picture if you'd like. And I was wondering if anyone else has any hypokalemic friendly meal ideas they'd like to share, because ideas are always great. Yeah. You can't. All right, so using brown rice pasta. Got it, yep, getting that complex carb there. Great. Oh, yes.
Yeah, so I would not use the low sodium marinara sauce because that has too much sugar in it.
Okay.
I would use butter and olive oil instead.
Okay. If that works for you, then yeah, I think that's great. I think, again, it's really gonna depend from person to person.
Just like what you just touched, the biggest thing is finding the right balance for us.
Exactly.
Just like I mentioned earlier with the sodium, it's some people can touch it, some people cannot.
Mm-hmm.
The whole wheat, some of us like, some of the wheat actually sugars it. Like I can't drink beer. Beer triggers me because of the high sugar content and the carbonation, yes. But then sometimes I can have something high in salt carbonations and I can eat it and I'll be okay. Same thing with oils and stuff.
Yeah.
Oiling, it triggers me, causes problems in my system. So it's all about the balance here and what may be up there for one, like you're saying.
Right.
Maybe the other person's not. There needs to be, this is all over the board.
It's all over the board, yeah. And balance. Okay, one more we'll take back there.
I was going to say, for me, it's all about, sometimes it's about combinations of things. I don't eat too many carbs just in general. I'm generally low carb. I can't, celiac disease, I can't eat gluten, so I kind of tend to be low carb. But if I eat salty carbs and alcohol, it's a pretty significant trigger for me to have a little. But if I have salty carbs and alcohol together, that's a huge trigger for me. I'm definitely not of that. So sometimes it's about how you eat what together.
Yeah. maybe you can't have that food like by itself, but you can have it maybe with other things. Yeah, so finding the right combination of things that work. Makes sense, thank you guys. All right, we are gonna move on to the hyperkalemic side of things. So that is triggered by excess potassium levels in the blood. Some triggers for symptoms are eating foods high in potassium, obviously, skipping meals, following strenuous exercise, stress, fatigue, cold temperatures. All right, so can someone share with me what foods are high in potassium? Avocado, tomatoes, mushrooms, sweet potatoes, bananas, watermelon, apricots, oranges, honeydew melon, tomatoes, potatoes, both, I guess, okay. Broccoli and cauliflower, raisins, coconut water. Ooh, I didn't think of that one. That's a good one. All right. I think you guys really nailed that list. Okay. So skipping meals can cause a drop in your insulin levels, which can then cause your potassium to increase and cause symptoms. So I think you guys pretty much nailed my list. So these are foods that are going to be highest in potassium. Obviously, super individualized. What works for one might not work for another. Maybe you have to combine these foods with certain things in order for them to work for your body. So I think there's not a set amount of how much people can have, so avoiding or limiting these things depending on how they personally affect you. Incorporating more low potassium foods helps, and avoiding skipping meals, so carrying a snack, keep one in your bag, your car, your purse, whatever, can be helpful. All right, so I always tell people when they have dietary restrictions to focus on what they can have. So here's just some, obviously not all, but some examples of foods that are going to be low in potassium that you can have, some people can have, right? Again, maybe triggers are gonna be different for different people, but generally these foods are low in potassium. And also always wanna be mindful of portions. Again, maybe you can handle half of something, but a whole of something might trigger your symptoms. The white carbs, different sorts of milk alternatives. If dairy, the potassium in dairy triggers you, and then here are some fruits and vegetables that are going to be lower as well. Same thing here. I put together some little meal ideas and snack ideas that might work for some, maybe not for others, but in case you need some ideas for foods, because I know myself can get in a food rut and be like, what the heck do I eat? And maybe swapping some things out here if you do see something that triggers you, but what I kind of want to point out is just incorporating a balance, right? So having a carb, protein, fat with each meal to make sure you're getting the full nutritional balance there. Okay, and I wanted to touch on Anderson-Tawil syndrome, which is a rare genetic disorder characterized by episodes of muscle weakness and paralysis, abnormalities affecting the electrical system of the heart that can cause abnormal heart rhythms, and a variety of distinctive facial and skeletal features. These episodes can be triggered by either high or low potassium levels. This requires a super individualized treatment plan, so really needing to work with a doctor and probably a dietitian to keep a food journal, identify triggers, and help you kind of form a meal plan that's going to work for you. So how can a dietitian help you folks that struggle with periodic paralysis? Definitely can work with your doctor, work with your medical team, be a really valuable member on the team to help you identify triggers to ensure you're getting balanced and adequate nutrition. help ensure that you have a continued good relationship with food, because sometimes when we have to cut a bunch of stuff out, people then can sometimes struggle with disordered eating, or it puts you more at risk for disordered eating and things like that. It can also help if you have any other diagnoses that impact nutrition. And again, I really like to use that team approach because everyone's input is super valuable. And one thing that I'm sure you all are aware, or maybe aware, that I realized while researching for this presentation is we need more research. We need more research. That is something I ran into of just the limited amount of information out there, especially on the nutrition piece, and I'm sure with other pieces as well. So I think continuing to advocate and push for that. So a couple key takeaways. Nutrition is highly, highly individualized and requires a lot of trial and error. It's gonna be a continuing process. Know your triggers and make sure to plan accordingly. Oops. All right, and that is all. Thank you guys so much.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so we'll be glad to take questions from the audience. You're welcome to come up or send them up. They're already starting to arrive. And for the folks that are on Zoom, and just to let you know, we are aware of the problem with the chat feature. Thanks for letting us know. We can't fix it without stopping the live stream, so we'll do that at the lunch break. And so this afternoon session and following will be set to go. All right, so here's a question for you. Ready?
Ready.
Like some others with hypokalemic periodic paralysis, my daughter and I have troubles with possible gastroparesis after eating. Do you know how to prevent the distended belly, early full feeling, etc.?
Yeah, this is a great question. So managing, I just want to make sure I get this right, managing kind of gastroparesis with the dietary modifications with hypo? Yeah. So I'm happy also to chat with you more afterwards, because I could talk a lot about gastroparesis. Again, I feel like I've said it 100 times, but finding those foods that are going to digest for you, right? So those are going to be foods that are actually lower in fiber, foods that are softer, don't have skins, easier to digest, sometimes more bland, not wanting to have super fried spicy foods. More small frequent meals can really help, so you're putting less in your stomach at a time, right? And that can also help with the bloating. And I think also doing things like, if you can walk after eating meals, sometimes using a hot compress can help, and really limiting your fluid intake during the meal, because fluids fill us up, right? So trying to maybe get your fluids in between meals, but I'm happy to chat more after too, okay?
Okay, thank you. The next question, will you please expand on the alcohol avoidance for hypo?
On the alcohol components for hypo. I'm going to defer that question to Dr. Cannon, because I think he can explain the science behind that a little bit more than I can. So we'll save it.
Sorry, team, we'll wait for that one.
Yep.
All right, for hypo, does the sugar content in fruit like bananas and watermelon contradict the potassium in them?
Oh, I see what you're saying. That's a good question. I don't know if you guys are gonna like my answer, but I think it's going to really depend on the individual and kind of what your threshold is for those things, right? But some people are gonna be more sensitive to sugar and how sugar impacts your bloodstream versus others. So again, I think it's fooling around with portions, right? Like maybe having half a banana or having the banana with toast and peanut butter, right? Kind of figuring out what that balance works for you.
Okay, the next question, it looks like, I'll give it to you, but I think they may want the audience to respond somehow. Do others have problems in restaurants with the use of MSG and other preservatives? In other words, meaning severe attacks in restaurants. So maybe we could just have a show of hands if that's the case. A couple hands if MSG or preservatives. Okay, And do you have any thoughts to add to that?
No thoughts, no.
Okay. Any additional questions from the audience? We have a couple more. Does caffeine negatively impact periodic paralysis?
From what research I did not come across anything regarding caffeine. You know, I think caffeine can affect a lot of different things when it comes to digestion, but I think it's gonna be kind of how sensitive your system is, since I feel like probably people with periodic paralysis have a heightened system anyway. You're probably gonna be just more sensitive to it, and so being cautious when using caffeine.
Okay. Do you recommend any particular diet for weight loss for those with periodic paralysis?
Yeah, so I think if weight loss is something you're interested in, I would encourage you to speak with a physician and also a registered dietitian, because you would need an individualized plan. There's no like specific diet I would really offer you, but I would start by working on having a balanced plate, incorporating any movement or exercise when you can, and general just taking care of your stress levels and your health, and I would follow up with your doctor.
Very good. And last question, unless there's more coming up, and we do have a couple more minutes. Are there any specific supplements that may help with periodic paralysis?
Not that I know of. I think, again, that might be something your medical team might suggest to try. So I would recommend talking with them or your dietitian, since that's also very individualized. You know, they can contradict with other medications you take, and so I'm very cautious with supplements.
All right, we've had another one come up. Somebody wants their bananas. Do bananas have less sugar when they're green? Not yet fully ripe.
They do have less sugar when they're green versus then when they're ripe, because the ripening process does make them sweeter. When they're green, you also get more of the prebiotic fiber. Now, regards to the exact gram sugar difference, I don't know that off the top of my head, but I could look it up and get back with you.
Very good. This one says, my wife has Addison's and hypokalemic periodic paralysis and all of the disorders that you mentioned you personally have. Do you do phone consults?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Feel free to stop by, and
Yes.
I will give you my info.
Check in after that. Okay. Do we have any? I'm sorry? Turnips? Turnips. I don't know. Is that a? How do turnips work?
How do turnips work? Turnips are higher in potassium. They are 500 milligrams per 1 cup, and the only reason why I know that is because we were served turnips at dinner last night, and we were all curious.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, do you have suggestions for digestive enzymes?
For digestive enzymes, there are a few that I do like on Amazon. I think a good digestive enzyme is going to have glutamine, and you also want to have a complex, if you read the bottle, that's going to help you digest carbs, proteins, and fats. But if you want specific recommendations, I'm happy to speak with you after.
Okay, and then back to the weight loss question.
Okay.
Do the new diabetic meds, such as, I don't know the first pronunciation, Mounjaro and Ozempic,
Ozempic, Wegovy.
affect periodic paralysis negatively? Do we know?
Do we know? I have a feeling we don't know how that affects, because the use of Wegovy, Ozempic, and those sorts of diabetes weight loss drugs, they've been around a long time for use for treating diabetes, newer usage for helping with weight loss, and so we are actually just recently finding out that people that use Wegovy, Ozempic, those sorts of things, are actually developing gastroparesis and motility issues. So I can't imagine it does good things for periodic paralysis, but I really doubt we have research on it yet because it is so new.
Okay, and any final questions? Well, if not, we say thank you, Anita, for coming out and giving us such a good talk.
Thank you, guys.
If you would like to know more about periodic paralysis, visit periodicparalysis.org. And if you enjoyed this video and want more, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit that bell so you don't miss any future videos. It really does help spread the word. You can view other videos about periodic paralysis by clicking the thumbnails to the right. If you have questions, just leave a comment below or reach out to us on social media. We'd love to hear from you.